Tes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, watching from home on Facebook Live from the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce Facebook page, this is the 2020 All Candidates Forum for the 2020 provincial election for the Carrot River Valley constituency here on Monday, October 19th, 2020. We're located at the Nipawin Apostolic Church on traditional Treaty 6 territory, the home of the Métis people. My name's Aaron Schultz. I'll be your moderator for tonight's All Candidates Forum. I'd like to thank the timer Susan Westgard, the screener Ben Paskrick, the president of the Nipawin and Nipawin District Chamber of Commerce president, and obviously everyone at home watching tonight's All Candidates Forum. I'd like to thank the two attendees for tonight's All Candidates Forum, Mr. Fred Bradshaw for the Saskatchewan Party and Mr. Rod McCorriston for the Saskatchewan New Democratic Party. We'd like to give a big thanks to the Nipawin Apostolic Church for partnering with the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce to host for tonight's event, and a thank you to Nipawin Computer Solutions for supplying some of the mobile devices to stream this event. All right, we're going to go over the rules for tonight's All Candidates Forum, and they go as follows. The order of speakers' placement will be drawn just prior to the start of the meeting, in this case a coin flip, which will be revealed shortly. There will be no political signage, flyer posters, banners, pamphlets, badges, etc., and no party solicitation by volunteers or candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a presentation. This includes any introduction by a third party. Candidates will be given a 1-minute remaining signal during the presentation and then another 10-second time remaining signal. You will have water at the podiums. Coffee cannot be served. If you'd like to bring your own, you are welcome. Questions will be collected before the event. All the questions collected are from constituents in the Carrot River Valley riding. If we have enough time, questions can be taken from Facebook comments as the All Candidates Forum continues. No questions will be taken from the floor, and after the question period, the moderator will read the questions out loud, then direct the questions to the candidate the question was directed to. The remaining candidates will then be welcome to answer the question that was directed to the first candidate. This way, the audience can hear each party's platform on that particular issue. When questions are directed to all candidates will then have the opportunity to answer the directed question. Candidates may pass comment on any question. Replies to the questions will be limited to 2 minutes. The timer will provide 30-second time remaining signal, then another 10-second time remaining signal. Each candidate will have a 30-second rebuttal. So say, for example, in this case, if Mr. Bradshaw were to begin with 2 minutes on an issue, Mr. McCorstone would have 30 seconds to respond, followed by another 30-second response by Mr. Bradshaw. The closing comments will last for 5 minutes. All right, in this case, it seems like we're both ready to go. The coin flip was done just before this stream began. The winner of the coin flip was Mr. McCorstone. So if I remember correctly, he elected to go second. So Mr. Fred Bradshaw from the Saskatchewan Party, up to you for the opening remarks.
Well, thank you. This election is unlike any election we've ever had. Due to COVID-19, some of our usual election practices have literally gone out the window. I give the people of Saskatchewan credit for keeping our pandemic numbers low, and together we will get through this. The big question is, who do you want to see lead this great province of ours forward? Is it Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party with a plan, or Ryan Miley and the NDP with no plan? I think the choice is clear. Unlike the Saskatchewan Party, the only plan Ryan Miley and the NDP have is to spend us into oblivion and never balance the budget. I guess they get that from their federal cousins in Ottawa, who are propping up the Trudeau government, who also has no plan to balance the budget. Under Scott Moe, the Saskatchewan Party has a plan to balance the budget by 2024, a 10-year plan to grow the province by 1.4 million people by 2030, and a plan to make Saskatchewan an economic powerhouse within Canada. Carrot River Valley has great potential. Not only do we have what I believe the best and most innovative farmers in all of Canada, but a thriving lumber and tourism industry. I want to see the good people of this constituency continue to move forward along with all the people of Saskatchewan. The way to do that is to have strong leadership with Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party. I've been honored to represent this constituency since 2007 and would like to continue. The fact is, I'm the only candidate that actually lives here, so I understand the concerns of the local people. On October 26th, I humbly ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, your 2-minute opening remark.
Hello, I'm Rod McCorston, your NDP candidate here in Carrot River Valley. I hope you and your loved ones are doing well. My late brother Mel ran in this area 36 years ago, so the NDP values were instilled in me in an early age. I want to warn you of what I believe will occur if we continue to elect Sask Party governments. This forewarning will allow you to make an informed decision in the upcoming election. We got a glimpse of the budget and it's not looking good. The Sask Party is forecasting a $2.4 billion deficit. Remember in 2017, right after the last election, when we had a $1 billion deficit? And the Sask Party responded by slashing and hacking and reducing funding to health and education. They killed STC. They tried to sell off SGI and SaskTel. If the Sask Party is reelected, get ready. Use the past to predict the future. Common sense tells us they'll cut our services, reduce funding to crucial areas like health and education, and they'll sell off our crowns. We've seen this playbook before. It's the same old Sask Party. What's the alternative? Well, to begin with, we have a plan. We want to renew Saskatchewan. Our plan begins by putting people first, and we will generate economic activity and growth. We're going to increase the lowest minimum wage in Canada to $15 an hour for our frontline workers. And to offset the cost of that increase, we'll play small business grants for small businesses. We need our infrastructure updated, so why not create employment for Saskatchewan families who will spend money in Saskatchewan? In the past, the Sask Party government has given most infrastructure projects to out-of-province and out-of-country contractors, which does nothing to stimulate the Saskatchewan economy. Every dollar spent on families here will net nearly $2 in return, and that can't happen if money is leaving our province. The Renew Saskatchewan program is future-focused. We can create jobs and industry by moving to a cleaner energy source and no additional cost to you. We're going to use our crown corporations more effectively to deliver high-speed internet and cell phone coverage for all of Saskatchewan. We're going to stop the outsourcing and the use of high-priced consultants in our province and out of country.
2 minutes goes by very quickly. All right, now opening the question period. So, of course, all these questions tonight have been emailed to us from the constituents of the Carrot River Valley. First question is, Hudson Bay is a great town filled with wonderful, hardworking people. In the past 15 years, we have lost our plywood mill and 170 jobs. Several dozen for sale signs are scattered all over town. Every highway leaving town has fallen into massive disrepair. The rail line from Hudson Bay to Tisdale gone. My question is, if elected as our MLA, what will you do to help bring jobs back to Hudson Bay and fix our crumbling infrastructure? Mr. Fred Bradshaw, you have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for that question. I think that actually Hudson Bay, if you remember, the mills were closed there during the NDP times and restarted, the Weyerhaeuser mill was restarted during the Saskatchewan Party time. Also, we have a new peat moss plant. Premier Pete is putting a bog in just north of Hudson Bay, which is going to help employment within Hudson Bay. We have been working on the roads around Hudson Bay. There is more work to do. I'll be the first one to admit it. But the one thing that we have done is we've definitely helped with their infrastructure. We've put money into their new water plant, their lift station there. So consequently, we have been working hard for Hudson Bay. And let's not forget the brand new school that Hudson Bay just got here that opened up in 2015. Consequently, Hudson Bay has actually done quite well under the Saskatchewan Party. They've created employment with the mill, created employment with the peat moss plant that is going, or the peat moss industry that is going to go there, and with the new school, which also is a very great asset to Hudson Bay. The school that they had was crumbling under their feet. It had a lot of mold in it, and the NDP never did anything about it. It was the Saskatchewan Party that went in and built the new school.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. It's a question directed to all candidates. So, Mr. McCorstone, you have 2 minutes. If elected MLA, what would you do to help bring jobs back to Hudson Bay and fix crumbling infrastructure?
What we're going to do, obviously, I've committed already to Hudson Bay to have a constituency office staffed in Hudson Bay. Our Renew Saskatchewan plan is also going to allow local contractors the opportunity to help with the installation of solar panels on people's roofs, and I can see a business starting up there in Hudson Bay.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. All right, moving on. Next question. This one's directed for Mr. McCorstone from the NDP. The Gateway Keewatin corridor has developed as the result of many years of hard work by dozens of people and the collaboration of many jurisdictions. Does the NDP party recognize the benefit of this endeavor, endorse the work being done, and commit to the necessary continued support that it will take to see this through? You have 2 minutes.
Sorry, can you repeat that question again? Could you repeat the question again?
Does the NDP recognize the benefit of the Gateway Keewatin corridor, endorse the work being done, and commit to the necessary continued support that will to see this through?
Yes, we would commit to supporting this initiative, and hopefully it would allow for more industry and products to reach market in a more efficient manner.
Mr. Bradshaw, 30-second rebuttal.
I've been a supporter of the Gateway Keewatin project for a long time. I'm a long-time member of the Hudson Bay Route Association. This is very critical to northeastern Saskatchewan. It can move our products through the Port of Churchill, which would definitely help out all of northeastern Saskatchewan. I believe in the Port of Churchill, and I think that this is something that we should be endeavoring to work towards and to help move not just our grain, but also our oil products.
Thank you. Mr. McCorstone, you're offered one more 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I find it somewhat hard to believe when the Sask Party hasn't moved on the Wollaston Lake Road. They've shut down things in the north, so I'm finding it quite surprising that we're actually we're both on the same page here supporting the Keewatin Gateway.
Thank you both. Moving on. This question is directed to Mr. Fred Bradshaw from the Saskatchewan Party. It is my understanding that since 2007, the Saskatchewan Party has sold 989,000 acres of Crown lease land. Can Mr. Bradshaw tell me what the average price per acre was over those 13 years, and where did the money go? Did it go to general revenue, or did it go somewhere else?
Yes, that land has been sold. I cannot tell you what the average price of that land would be, but I can tell you that that land has been sold. It was originally land that was bought up by the NDP under the land bank operation, which did not work out. Unfortunately, I know that there are some people out there that think that we should not have sold that land, but actually, that land should be run by farmers. It should not be owned by the province of Saskatchewan. That land should be run by farmers. And if the farmers want to purchase that land, I think that that is only fair. That money would go into the general coffers, as that money came out of general coffers to buy the land to begin with. Secondly, and I'm just going to go back to that last particular question for a second, and Mr. McCorstone missed out on the highway end of it. Highway 55 from Carrot River through to Red Earth is going to be tendered this fall. If we form government, that highway will be done, which is going to definitely help move product out towards the PAW. It's going to be made into a primary highway. So it's not that we are not doing work on highways, we are.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. A reminder to both candidates that you only have the certain amount of time limit to finish the question that is asked at that certain time. Mr. McCorstone, you're offered a 30-second rebuttal.
The Crown lease land they've sold off $3 billion worth of Crown lease land over the last 10 years. They've increased the lease rates by 45% in order to try and get the farmers off the land and sell it. And all we've heard is now it's going into general revenue. So that's the $3 billion in addition to the $26 billion deficit that we're in. That seems like they've wasted a lot of money. We're going to put 25% of the Crown lease land sold into a heritage fund, and that's going to fund initiatives for our future generations. It shouldn't be taken and put into general revenue. It should be saved for the future.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. Mr. Bradshaw, you have a 30-second rebuttal to that rebuttal.
Why should the government be competing with other farmers on the land? Why should the government be leasing land to the farmers at a cheaper rate than what the other people can get? That is totally unfair to the farmers, and if the farmers want to buy the land, I see absolutely no problem with it. And as far as going into a heritage fund, with the amount you are going to spend, I can't see any heritage fund there.
Thank you both. Another question directed to Mr. Bradshaw from the Sask Party, and this one constituent said that these voices have also been raised to, these concerns, pardon me, have also been raised to Mr. McCorstone from the Saskatchewan NDP. I'm aware of many duplexes, suites, apartments for low rental are currently empty. Seems not long ago there were waiting lists for these places. I am aware that the criteria has changed. However, if I ran a business and I changed things up and as a result went from having waiting lists to having empty rooms, I believe I would reevaluate. Comments, please, regarding the empty duplexes, apartments, and low rentals that are currently empty throughout the Carrot River Valley. Mr. Bradshaw, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, we have worked hard to have affordable housing. Now, what we did is we actually did increase the rent. The rent only on the people who have higher incomes. We actually had some people who were making very high incomes who were still going into the low rentals. So what we did is we changed it up to a percentage of their income. The people who were on the low income, basically their rent did not go up. It was the people who were the higher income people whose rent went up. There are some empty places. We have actually been dealing with some of the municipalities and the towns on them taking over those particular places. And it's worked out quite well. It's happened in various different communities. But as far as the increasing part of the rent, it only went up on people who had a very high income. We had some people who were up and making $120,000 a year were still being subsidized by government, and that is not right.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, a 30-second rebuttal.
Yes, I think we should lower the criteria. We should allow for disabled and seniors to access this housing. And of course, knowing that they're going in there, that if a family that meets the criteria needs that house, that they're going to have to vacate with a certain amount of time. But lower the criteria to allow the houses to become full. It'll take the strain and the stress off the funding partners.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. Mr. Bradshaw, one final 30-second rebuttal.
Well, as far as that, we have put a lot of money into Habitat for Humanity. Actually, the first Habitat for Humanity place that was built right here in Nipawin. That was the first one that was built outside of a big center. We have had that, so we have Habitat for Humanity. We've also had various rental development programs in Tisdale and Nipawin. So these things we have been moving forward on.
Thank you both. Moving on, this question is directed to Mr. McCorstone for the Saskatchewan NDP. Do you think that raising the minimum wage will hurt our economy under the circumstances? You have 2 minutes.
Not necessarily. I mean, that's why we're putting in some small business grants to help offset any cost. But we think that the $15 an hour wage increase will actually generate growth within the communities. We think that it'll stay in the small communities. The people earning a little bit more money, they'll spend money in the local communities, and that will increase economic growth in the local areas. That's what we're talking about as far as supporting local businesses and local people. So we want to make sure that the frontline workers who are working throughout this pandemic get rewarded with an increase in money instead of the lowest wage in the country.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. Mr. Bradshaw, a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, you have to realize that the vast majority of the NDP members have never run a business. I have. All they've ever done is received a T4. I've written T4s, and the vast majority of the people in our party have written T4s. When you increase that minimum wage, what's going to happen is you're going to see somebody who has maybe 3 people employed. What they're going to do is they're going to take it down to 2.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, one more 30-second rebuttal.
Certainly, we don't agree with that. We think that the dollars that we put in, and it's going to be phased in over 4 years. So it's not going to be a jump from $11.32 or whatever it is right now to $15. It's going to be staged in over 4 years. So that gives the businesses time to grow with the increase in salaries. Plus, we're going to offset that with small business grants as well to those that they're suffering. So we think it's going to be a total offset, and it won't hurt the employment and the economy. We think it's going to grow it.
Thank you both. Moving on, this question is directed to Mr. Bradshaw. Healthcare for seniors is concerning. I realize and appreciate the effort to keep seniors in their homes longer. However, I am personally aware of 2 families who are told that if you have grown children, it is assumed you have help, either caring for your parent yourself or helping one parent look after the other. It doesn't seem to matter that the grown children, beg pardon, either were still working themselves or didn't live near their parents. So I guess the question, healthcare for seniors and the seniors living in their own homes long-term, that topic, you got 2 minutes.
You know, actually, we have done a lot to support our seniors in this province. You know, when you take a look at the low-income seniors, for years, the NDP, actually for 16 years, the NDP kept the low-income seniors at only $90 per month. We have raised it to $270 per month, and if re-elected, we plan on raising that to $360 per month. This is going to help out all of our low-income seniors and help them to move forward with various different things. So this is something that we plan on doing as a government, and we have been supporting the seniors. We've had the seniors drug plan that is out there that has definitely been very helpful to the seniors. We have different programs out there that the seniors certainly appreciate. And when you look at what the NDP has done for the seniors by closing the long-term care beds that they did, we have to remember, they claim to be supporting the seniors, but really, they have not.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, a 30-second rebuttal.
We're going to make the best home care in Canada. And by the way, in 2011, the Sask Party took away the minimum care standards, guidelines that were put into long-term care homes. We see there's a crisis coming in the long-term care homes. And of course, with the baby boomers coming into these homes in the next 10 or 15 years, we're going to need the private, the public, and all the long-term care homes to house the crisis is coming on us. So it's necessary to keep people in their houses longer to give us more time to address this crisis.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. Mr. Bradshaw, one 30-second response.
Well, they can sit there and talk about it, but they closed 1,200 long-term care beds. They closed that. We actually have built, since we have had the privilege to form government in 2007, we've built 15 long-term care facilities, one right here in Tisdale. So let's, these are facts. These are not fiction. These are facts that the Saskatchewan Party is supporting our seniors.
Right on time. Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Thank you both for partaking in that question. Moving forward, it's being asked, what is your opinion if a second tier of carbon tax was applied in Saskatchewan, and in your opinion, what would be the impact to farmers? This first one's directed at Mr. Rod McCorstone. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the question. What we plan on doing in regards to the carbon tax is we're going to make a Saskatchewan-made climate plan that will remove any need for a federal carbon tax to be initiated. So there will be no carbon tax under an NDP government. We are going to make sure our plan fits to the federal criteria so that the federal carbon tax will not apply to Saskatchewan. And this Saskatchewan Party government could have done that very simply many years ago, and we wouldn't be faced with paying the carbon tax for all these years if they would have put a plan in place.
Thank you, Mr. Corstone. Mr. Bradshaw, a 30-second response.
Well, I think that the NDP is dreaming if they think that they can get the federal government to go along with them on their idea of a carbon tax. We have our Prairie Resilience Plan, which is a very good plan that is out there for Saskatchewan, and it's for the Saskatchewan people. You have to remember that the NDP, the federal NDP, is supporting the Trudeau government on the carbon tax, and the Saskatchewan NDP is supporting the federal NDP.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, one final 30-second rebuttal.
Well, like I said, we are going to put in a Saskatchewan climate change plan that will meet the federal criteria, and there will not be a carbon tax applied. It's as simple as that. All you got to do is reduce your emissions to meet the federal criteria, and the carbon tax does not apply. We're going to do that by putting solar on people's houses at no cost, and that will get us to the federal criteria, and it won't apply.
Thank you both. Moving forward, this question is directed to Mr. Bradshaw. Education is always a concern with the arrival of COVID-19. We are woefully aware of the shortfalls of available internet and Wi-Fi. Also, the assumption that everyone has access to internet, computers, and Wi-Fi is unacceptable. Never mind that parents are not necessarily computer illiterate. This is very stressful for parents and child alike. With the move to more online learning, more support is necessary. What is the plan regarding education related to internet and Wi-Fi access? You have 2 minutes.
We've been supporting our education system quite well during this whole pandemic. What we've done is we've actually made, and the school districts have made, laptops available to any families who could not afford them. So consequently, there is that out there for the families to be able to have access to laptops, to be able to further online education. This is something that has been done. We've also been increasing the education budget over the years. And fact is, and then again, these are facts. These are not fiction. We've increased the K-12 operating funding by 38%, compared to enrollment growth of only 15% since we've had the privilege to form government in 2007. Plus, I can go back to the schools again. We have been putting up new schools. We got 57 new schools in Saskatchewan right now, and more to come.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorstone, a 30-second, rebuttal.
Obviously, you're going to hear more about funding education, but we're going to fund education properly. We're going to put the teachers in place and the educational assistants and the caretakers to reduce class sizes. And we're also going to use the SaskTel, the Crown Corporation, to make sure that we got high-speed internet and cell phone coverage to all of Saskatchewan. I find it odd that in schools we can have gatherings of 35 to 40 people in a classroom, yet in a public gathering we can only have 15.
Thank you, Mr. McCorstone. Mr. Bradshaw, a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I don't know how they're going to do that without building more schools and going on to larger classrooms. Like, their record isn't very good. They shut down 176 schools, which is one a month during the time that they had the privilege to be in government. So I really find this hard to believe how they're going to do all of this.
Thank you both. This question is directed to once again is directed to Mr. Fred Bradshaw. We're going to the Facebook live comments on here, and a quick thank you to everyone watching on the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce Facebook page and watching the first half hour of this 2020 All Candidates Forum in the Carrot River Valley riding with Mr. Fred Bradshaw from the Saskatchewan Party and Mr. Rod McCorstone from the Saskatchewan NDP. This question is directed to Mr. Fred Bradshaw. There are 66 cases of COVID-19 recorded in Saskatchewan today. To my knowledge, I believe that might be a provincial high. How long before government locks down again? You have 2 minutes.
We are not planning on locking down the province like what has been done in some of the other provinces. Actually, we are truthfully, we are at a very low rate when you compare us to the rest of Canada, where in some provinces they've had astronomical numbers and they have locked down the province. Thus far, we have no intention on locking down the province. We've had the best employment record in Saskatchewan since COVID started, and we plan to have that continue. We still want to thank the people of Saskatchewan for all that they have done. We've got some areas that are localized, large increases, but what we do not believe that we have to shut down the economy of all Saskatchewan if you just have localized cases. We are aware of them, and we will continue to work with the people. We're going to continue to work with our health system to see this through.
30 seconds, Mr. McCorston.
I think that shutting down the economy isn't an option either. I agree with Mr. Bradshaw on that, but I think that we need clear guidance on wearing of masks indoors. I think that that will help slow the spread, and it will also be clear and make people clear and aware of the problems, and they'll be making sure that they wash their hands, they stay 6 feet apart, and they wear masks while they're indoors. I think that would help as well.
30 seconds, Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, I think this is something that actually we can both agree on. It's the education of the people. The people have done very, very well in Saskatchewan. We have some localized cases. It's a matter of people have to be cautious. We can't just go out there and do the things that we did before. So all I'm saying is let everybody be very cautious. Use your hand sanitizer. Use your mask when you're needed, and don't go into large gatherings.
Thank you both. Moving forward, this question is directed to Mr. McCorston. How are small businesses supposed to grow with COVID-19 going into a second phase as it looks? This in regards to the minimum wage increase. How are businesses supposed to grow during both of these things? You have 2 minutes.
Well, like I stated before, I mean, the minimum wage is going to be phased in over 4 years, and we are giving small business grants to those businesses who are directly affected by the increases. We are going to put in a program to support local, buy local, and support local businesses as well. So we're looking at that as an option to help the small businesses grow. I see a lot of vacant businesses, a lot of storefronts in the small towns are no longer there. So we're going to have to look for new industry and new opportunities to create opportunities like I'm talking about for solar installation, for instance. That's a good opportunity for small business to start in rural Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. McCorston. 30 seconds, Mr. Bradshaw, rebuttal.
Well, we have already said that if the Saskatchewan Party is fortunate enough to form government, we are going to lower the small business tax. So consequently, lowering that tax on the small business is going to help them survive through this trying time. This is something that the Saskatchewan Party believes in, and we strongly believe in small business, and small business is the backbone of Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorston, a final 30-second rebuttal.
Yes, I mean, I think we're also going to invoke a plan for $25 a day childcare and open up 2,200 more childcare spaces across the province, and that's an opportunity as well for small businesses in rural Saskatchewan to be gainfully employed.
Thank you both. Moving forward, this question is open to all candidates, so each are provided 2-minute responses to this question. What is the single biggest issue facing Northeast Saskatchewan, the Carrot River Valley riding, and how would you address it? Mr. Bradshaw, you got 2 minutes.
I believe part of it is being able to move our product properly. We've had a hard time in northeastern Saskatchewan moving some of our grains to port, down out to the left coast. It seems to be a problem that is never ending. It also is a problem with our logging industry. You have to remember the lumber industry is very important to northeastern Saskatchewan, and we have to have that stuff being able to be moved by rail. So consequently, we've had some problems through the ports out on the West Coast. What we want to do, and it's in our 10-year plan, is to support Churchill. We have to have another outlet, not just for our grains and our lumber, but also for oil. Now, we don't really have any oil in northeastern Saskatchewan. We know it's there, but the infrastructure isn't there yet to be able to possibly move it. So consequently, what I would like to see in northeastern Saskatchewan is let's get some more value added production with our grains, such as what's being talked about in Tisdale, and not just talked about, they're actually working on it at the present time. Let's see more crushing plants going here, and let's get some of the product, finished product, out to market, and we have to run through, I believe, more than just 1 or 2 ports.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorston, that's all candidates' questions, so 2 minutes, the largest issue facing Northeast Saskatchewan and how you address it. You got 2 minutes.
I think understaffing is the major problem. Understaffing in healthcare, long-term care, and also in the education. I think that we need a lot more teachers, a lot more education assistants, and we need about 400 caretakers to reduce the class sizes, but also in long-term care homes. What's happening, what I believe is happening since COVID has hit, is the understaffing problem in the long-term care homes has become even worse because they were relying on some of the family members to help out with some of the care, the minor care of these residents. And that's no longer available with the lockdown in these long-term care homes. And so we're seeing the stress of the long-term care workers as well. I think that there needs to be more staffing, and that'll create more economic activity in the small towns as well. So that's our plan, is to grow ourselves out of this mess of debt left by the Sask Party.
Thank you both. Moving forward, this question is directed to Mr. McCorston. Again, thank you to everyone watching on Facebook Live, providing questions for the Carrot River Valley 2020 All Candidates Forum. Directed to Mr. McCorston, what does the NDP have planned for bus service in this region? You have, or bus service in the province, you have 2 minutes.
Well, what I have planned, and I haven't, this is my plan, so it's not the NDP plan, but we're going to bring back STC in some form into rural Saskatchewan. But my plan is to have a public-private partnership. That means we have the feeder vans from the outlying areas feed the larger buses that go into the 3 largest cities in the province and then return back in time for the feeder vans to hit to the rural communities. These feeder vans will also be carrying freight with them, and so that will make it a feasible option. When the NDP was running STC, it was losing about $1 million a year. When the Sask Party killed STC, they said it was losing $12 million a year. I'm thinking that's just something to do with bad management.
Thank you, Mr. McCorston. A 30-second rebuttal, Mr. Fred Bradshaw.
Actually, it was more than that. It was $17 million a year. And I don't know how the STC or how this NDP are going to come up with a plan to be able to run the buses when they were losing money constantly. Where is the NDP going to get the
Saskatchewan has the third highest tuition fees for universities. What is the Saskatchewan Party going to do to change this? You have 2 minutes.
Actually, our universities, the tuition fee is not the biggest problem at the universities. A lot of times, and I know because I had both of my children went through university, most of the time it is more the actual housing of the student, not the tuition. But we have been supporting our students all the way through, and we will continue to support our students. Tuition is one thing, but there are other costs that are involved with that. And the part about students is one thing about it. Students can also get part-time, a lot of times can get part-time jobs. Now, under the NDP, when they had a part-time job, they were actually having to pay a lot of tax on that. What we've done is we've increased the threshold of the income tax within Saskatchewan. So those students that are going out and having part-time jobs while they are going to university, and quite a few students are doing that, they are not having to pay any tax on that money. So that is helping them out in that regard also.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorson, a 30-second rebuttal.
Scott Moe and the SAS Party, they have slashed $25 million, or 5% of the overall budget in 2017 to universities, and they've held the line on spending limits for the next 3 years. The cut forced university hike tuition by 8%. What we're going to do is we're going to eliminate interest from student loans, savings, and we're going to give free tuition to young people aging out of foster care, and we're going to restore funding to the Northern Teacher Program, and we're going to provide $125 million in additional to hire more teachers, EA, and educational professionals.
Thank you, Mr. McCorson. Mr. Bradshaw, pardon me, a 30-second rebuttal.
With all these promises that the NDP is making, where are they going to get the money? Where is this money going to come through? Money does not grow on trees. I find it hard to believe how they can keep on coming up with saying they're going to do this and they are going to do that, but they have never come up with a way of how they are going to be able to finance this and or balance a budget. It is impossible.
Thank you both. Moving forward, this question is directed to all candidates, so you each have 2-minute responses to this question. How can technology be used to resolve economic issues in rural Saskatchewan? Mr. McCorson, you have 2 minutes.
Well, with the new way of conducting business, the internet is getting more and more popular and more useful to conduct business, but they need to have a reliable internet service wherever they live to conduct business, and it's not being fairly distributed across the province. We're seeing areas like our Carrot River Valley, areas where there is no cell phone service or the internet is spotty, and we've had people working from home throughout this pandemic, and it's been difficult because they're not able to access the internet in a reliable fashion. We need to fix that problem, and we'll use our Crown Corporation, SaskTel, to fix it.
Thank you, Mr. McCorson. Mr. Bradshaw, a 2-minute response.
Yes, technology has definitely moved forward because most of the farmers now are actually dealing with their grain prices on the internet, and they're using GPS guidance on their tractors. Now that's not internet, but the cell service, we've actually spent a lot of money in the Carrot River Valley. For example, in 2019 and 20, we had $146,000 to increase the capacity and modernize key components to meet needs over there. In Tisdale had a $310,000 upgrade broadband facilities and bring internet into Tisdale. In 2019 and 20, Nipawin received $667,000 to upgrade broadband facilities. And in 2019 and 20, Pontrilis received $551,000 for 4G LTE and LTE TDD wireless. So consequently, we have been working very hard to move this forward. And I think that we've actually done a pretty good job. There are some spots that are still a little sketchy, and I'll be the first to admit it, but we were putting up towers and trying to improve the service all the way through.
Thank you both. This question from the Facebook Live comments on the Nipawin District Chamber of Commerce Facebook page. This is directed to Mr. McCorson. I saw highway workers with Alberta and BC plates working on the Campbell Lake Road and Tobin Lake and Prince Albert. Why not Saskatchewan people? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I talked to a constituent that was quite upset about this. It was all summer long, it seemed like we had Alberta plates working on our highways. We're going to put a Saskatchewan First program in place where our workers, our contractors, that are able to, and I mean, we even had Saskatchewan companies bid on that work, I'm told, and they weren't successful. It was given to an outer province. And it doesn't surprise me. The Alberta companies are funding the Sask Party. It doesn't surprise me that they're bringing in Alberta workers to work on our highways, but it won't happen with the NDP. We will have a Saskatchewan First, and we will employ Saskatchewan people over out of province or out of country contractors.
Thank you, Mr. McCorson. Mr. Bradshaw, a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I happen to know that the highway that was just recently built up to Tobin Lake was built with Saskatchewan contractors. Actually, Bryden Construction out of Arborfield was up there building on that particular highway. This is a highway that the NDP neglected forever. Now we have a brand new highway running up to Tobin Lake, built with Saskatchewan workers. And speaking of your going Saskatchewan first, I will have to get into that one later, apparently. The buzzer just went.
Good show following the rules. Mr. McCorson, a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, there was also a Alberta a company that was working on the road. I don't know if they're a crack sealing or what, from Choiceland all the way to PA. And there was also I can't remember the name of the resort town up further north, but there was Alberta plates on that road as well during the summer. And I know that the Saskatchewan highways are limited. They can only work on a stretch of highways that's 3 kilometers or less. If it's over 3 kilometers, it's farmed out to contractors.
Thank you both. This one's directed to Mr. Bradshaw. The Saskatchewan Party was very vocal for back-to-work legislation when CP and CN conductors were on strike. However, they were eerily silent in the co-op refinery dispute. Why is the Sask Party tipping the scales when it comes to collective bargaining? You have 2 minutes.
You have to realize that the CP and the CN strike is a totally different animal. That is what moves our grain out from Saskatchewan. That's what moves our products, not just our grain, but our forestry products. That is what moves our stuff out of this province and out to market. Saskatchewan exports close to 80% of what we produce. That is a killer. The co-op refinery strike was done between a private company, the co-op, and Unifor. So consequently, that is a completely different animal. And what we did, though, is we did facilitate having a negotiator come in and look at it and try and get some of the problems fixed. Eventually, everything did work out, and I think it worked out well for both parties in that particular situation. But having a CN and a CP strike would actually totally ruin Saskatchewan's economy since we are so export-oriented.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. McCorson, a 30-second rebuttal.
We need to rebalance the labor laws in Saskatchewan. The Sask Party has tipped it too far to the employer. What my strategy is after 90 days of an impasse or a strike or anything else, binding arbitration. is in place, so that so the strikes and lockouts can't go on and hurt the economic recovery of Saskatchewan. 90 days is long enough to have a strike, or long enough for the workers to be locked out. And then Vince Reddy, he came in and made a good deal.
Oh.
And that deal should have been
Mr. McCorson, you're out of time. Mr. Bradshaw, a 30-second rebuttal.
I think the Saskatchewan employers and employees have done very well under the Saskatchewan Party. All you have to do is take a look at the extra 75,000 people we have working in this province since we had the opportunity to form government in 2007. That shows that not only do employees enjoy it in Saskatchewan, but employers enjoy it in Saskatchewan too. We want to be a business-friendly province.
Mr. Bradshaw, you're out of time. Thank you. All right, thank you both. Moving on, another all candidates questions, so you're each entitled to 2-minute responses. Lease rates for our Sask Power-owned farmland along Tobin Lake have increased to an uneconomic levels. Farmers in the area have had a tough number of years. How is the premium lease rate justified? Mr. McCorson, you got 2 minutes.
Well, I sort of addressed this one in previously, but I do believe that the lease rates have increased over the last number of years, 45%, and that's above the market value of this property. So I think they're trying to gouge, or they're trying to force the farmers to either buy the lease land or move off the lease so they can sell it. That's what I think is happening. You cut through all the red tape, and it's not good. These families have farmed this land for generations, and now because the Sask Party needs a little bit of cash, they're raising the lease rates in order to sell the Crown lease lands. We don't think that's right. We think that if you're going to sell the Crown lease lands, then you need to put something away for the future generations, the youth of this province. That's their heritage that you're selling off. So there should be some funds put away for the future.
Thank you, Mr. McCorson. Mr. Bradshaw, a 2-minute response to the question.
Well, part of the problem is when E.B. Campbell was first made, the Sask Power took over a large portion of the land, obviously, to be able to create Tobin Lake. Now, some of that land is still in the floodplain, so it actually cannot be sold because there are liability reasons why Sask Power cannot sell it. They have increased the lease rates, and I know that they've had some flooding problems. I have been talking with our Premier and with the head of water security over some of the problems that we could alleviate up there. In fact, this summer when the Premier was up here, I actually took him and flew him in the airplane over there so he could have a first-hand look at some of the problems that we are having there so that we can address this in a relatively timely fashion. This is something that I have been working on and will continue to work on.
Thank you both. All right, we've reached the point in our evening where it's time for the closing remarks. Thanks again to everyone watching on Facebook Live on the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page for providing your comments all night, and thanks for emailing questions to the Nipawin District Chamber of Commerce and myself, Aaron Schultz, prior to tonight's All Candidates Forum. Because we began with opening remarks, Mr. Bradshaw for the Sask Party began. This time we'll do it vice versa. Mr. McCorstone, you have 5 minutes for closing remarks.
My wife and I were both raised on farms north of Tisdale and have raised 2 boys. I spent 20 years working for Department of Highways and Transportation in Tisdale, assisting to coordinate the highway maintenance in the Carrot River constituency and across Saskatchewan. For the last 10 years, I worked to help make sure workers get a fair shake, serving as the Director of Labor Relations for the Saskatchewan Government and General Employees Union. I have started entry-level positions and through hard work, determination, and dedication, rose to the top or near the top of organizations that I have worked for. I've always been successful in achieving outcomes for people I've had the privilege to represent. I intend to bring this same approach to representing the voters. It would be my honor and privilege to represent your interests and get you any help you need. Some of the highlights of the NDP platform are, in healthcare, long-term care, and home care, the NDP will fund 1,700 new positions to address the understaffing of doctors, nurses, care aides, and other health professionals, as well as maintenance and custodial staff. We're going to fund education properly. we're adding 1,000 more teachers, 700 education assistants, and 400 caretakers to reduce class sizes and afford the best chance of success for our students. We must ensure the hard-earned tax dollars are spent wisely to fund our future, instead of being wasted and mismanaged by failed mega projects, the carbon capture project, the Regina bypass, the global transportation hub, the smart meters, the lean project, the privatization of our crowns. We're going to create economic growth by using Saskatchewan companies and Saskatchewan workers to build our infrastructure projects. We're going to reduce the vehicle insurance rates. We're going to reduce the PST on construction labor. We're going to hire 4,000 professionals. We're raising the lowest minimum wage in Canada, $15 an hour for our frontline workers. And this will be done during our first term in office. We're also putting in place $25 childcare. And we feel every dollar afforded to families stimulates the economy and almost doubles our economic activity. We believe we need to grow ourselves out of the mess of debt left behind by the Sask Party by buying local and supporting local business. We will bring back the STC in some form that will be responsive to the rural needs. Rural infrastructure, roads and bridges in rural areas need help. I'll promote dialogue with APEGs and rural municipalities to understand their needs and priorities and advocate for funding. Our platform has been approved by an independent economist, and we will be paying off the deficit by $500 million a year. We don't need any advice from the Sask Party, who have yet to balance a budget under the current leadership. Our Renew Saskatchewan plan, solar, wind, and geothermal installed at no cost to the consumer. The interest-free loan will be paid off by the reduction in power costs being applied to the loan. After the loan is paid off, the consumer gets to enjoy a reduction in power costs. This will generate a new industry and new opportunities in rural areas installing these carbon-reducing initiatives. The NDP government will implement a climate change plan that will meet the federal criteria and protect families from the Trudeau carbon tax. We support the energy sector and agree pipelines are the safest and most efficient way to transport our products to market. We are encouraged by the energy sector regarding the potential to create jobs in the geothermal industry until the oil prices increase. The NDP is in favor of moving to a more sustainable, cleaner source of energy, while not at the expense of the reduction in the workforce. I have some criticism about the Sask Party. They become arrogant, they lack accountability, they've mismanaged, and they made bad business deals. The Global Transportation Hub, or by another name, the Regina land scam, needs to have a public inquiry to find out all the full details. The carbon capture project cost $1.4 billion and was not able to deliver on contracts signed by the government. And the failure to deliver these costs in the millions had to be paid as well. The smart meter fiasco, the failed lean project, the over-expenditure of the Regina bypass by $1 billion, and my favorite, the cheap booze promise. Perhaps Mr. Bradcott could explain the rationale for closing the public liquor stores in Tisdale and Hudson Bay and keeping the one in Nipawin, where he had a relative working in the liquor store. I certainly hope this did not play in the decision-making process. I just found out the other day the real reason why STC, I suspect, was sold off. Life Labs was awarded a contract worth $60 million for the transportation of medical supplies throughout Saskatchewan. Shortly after STC was privatized, STC was providing this service without complaint. This company is a large Sask Party donor. Another example of backroom deals made by Mo and his oil boys club. This decision was hurtful for the residents in rural and Aboriginal communities. The decision is the opposite of putting people first. Ryan Miley, he's a caring, compassionate person who cares about improving the lives and the citizens of Saskatchewan.
Mr. McCorstone, you're out of
going
time.
through the worst health care and crisis. It's time that we led safely and efficiently.
Mr. McCorstone, you're out of time. Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw, 5 minutes closing remarks.
Well, first off, I want to thank everyone who asked questions and tuned in. I also would like to thank the Nipawin Chamber for coordinating this event. The Saskatchewan Party motto is a strong Saskatchewan. We want to lead recovery during this pandemic by lowering power bills by 10% for homeowners, renters, farmers, and businesses. Part of this is to offset the Trudeau carbon tax. You know, the ones the NDP are propping up. We will also help with the cost of home renovations. We'll continue building schools, highways, and other important infrastructure projects. We're going to be reducing the small business tax. That's if we're reelected. Our plan for a strong Saskatchewan will make life more affordable for everyone, families, students, seniors, homeowners, and others. And unlike the NDP, we'll balance the budget by 2024. The reason I got into politics was for our children's sake. I had a good business, but I got tired of seeing kids graduating and leaving this province for other jurisdictions. I felt the Saskatchewan Party had a new vision for this province, and I wanted to be a small part of that. As it turned out, I was right, and I'm proud to say both of our children are working and living in this great province. From 1995 to 2007, the NDP had the worst job creation in Canada. Compare that to the Saskatchewan Party, who has had the second best job creation in Canada, 75,500 since taking office in 2007. This shows our entrepreneurs have confidence in this government. From 1996 to 2006, the Saskatchewan population declined by over 26,000. Since 2007, population grew by nearly 170,000. Just another sign people have faith in the Saskatchewan Party. The NDP love to talk about health, so let's look at the facts. They closed 52 hospitals, 2 in this constituency. They lost 450 nurses and 173 doctors from 2001 to 2006. Under the Saskatchewan Party, new hospitals are being built. Saskatoon, North Battleford, Moose Jaw, Prince Albert, and Weyburn. The province now has 900 more doctors and 3,800 more nurses since 2007. The NDP claimed to support seniors, but when they had the privilege to be government, they closed 1,200 long-term care beds and had no increase in the seniors' income plan benefit. Under the Saskatchewan Party government, we have built 15 new long-term care facilities, one of them right in this constituency, and tripled the seniors' income plan benefit from $90 per month to $270 per month. The NDP claimed that we are devastating education, but let's look at the facts again. When they were in government, they closed 176 schools. That's 1 a month. We've built 57 new schools, one of those in Hudson Bay and another one scheduled for Carrot River, and have also done 28 major school renovations. From 2001 to 2007, the NDP lost 400 teachers. From 2007, under the Saskatchewan Party government, the teacher population has increased by 1,300. We have also increased the K-12 operating funding by 38% compared to enrollment growth of 15%. I would continue on, but we do have time constraints. In closing, I'm urging you to support myself and Scott Moe for a strong Saskatchewan on October the 26th. Vote Saskatchewan Party.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw, and thank you both for participating in tonight's All Candidates Forum.
Thank you very much.
And of course, that concludes our evening. That concludes the 2020 Carrot River Valley All Candidates Forum. I would like to thank once again Mr. Fred Bradshaw from the Saskatchewan Party and Mr. Rod McCorston from the Saskatchewan NDPs for partaking in tonight's evening. And of course to you, also we have a few more thank yous. We have Mr. Ben Paskaric, the President of the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce, doing the screening duties tonight, and Susan Westgard, a board member from the Nipawin and District Chamber of Commerce, for running the timer, ringing the bell whenever it's time to move on. And of course, you, the viewers at home, you, the constituents of the Carrot River Valley riding, make sure your voices are heard on Monday, October 26th. Don't forget to register, go to advanced polls, vote on the 26th, do anything to ensure your voice is heard in the 2020 Saskatchewan general election. I'm Aaron Schultz. This concludes the All Candidates Forum. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy your evening.